Thank you, bonjour. Yeah, this is an English session, don't worry. So today we are going to see more about Zero Trust security for your APIs. We're going to learn what is Zero Trust security for your APIs. Brief introduction, myself, Akshata Sawant. I'm working as a developer advocate at Salesforce. My career, it's all been about integration, API space, security, and yeah, MuleSoft. So I'm an author, a blogger, a video recorder. So I've recently co-authored a book, which is here, and I'll be giving it away at the end. I love traveling, photography. I'm a big time foodie, and I would love to connect with you guys over socials as well. So with that, the agenda for today's session. So we are mainly going to see like what is the need for security. What is Zero Trust security? How do we implement? And Zero Trust security is for different domains, different enterprise architectures, for different models. But we're mainly going to see why do we need it for APIs and how do we implement Zero Trust security for APIs. And we're also going to have a quick demo wherein we can see like how do we apply security policies, a live demo, yeah. I've just prayed demo gods and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it works. If you guys have any questions, we'll take them towards the end. And yeah, so let's get started. Okay, we all are aware, like Rome wasn't, I mostly start my sessions with code and I'm like, okay, let's go. So yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, but we know that it was destroyed to ground, like it was brought to ground on in a night, right? So that's the thing about security, that's the thing about the empires. They are fragile, they are weak, and you need time to build them. But one security mishap or one wrong stuff or one security attack can actually bring your organization's name down. It can impact the trust. It can actually impact your customer trust, your relations with your customers, your organizations, your revenue. It's actually a big thing. So do we have any GDA fans here? I'm sure there must be few. So last year, I mean, if you guys have heard about or if you're aware about, there was a security incident. Just before the game release, GTA 6 game release, the game was actually leaked online. And what happened was it was a big news. There were so many memes, and then there was like, it was everywhere, all over the internet. There were so many blogs, and there was also a news that it has been done by someone insider, like someone like an employee. So someone within the organization, they leaked the game details, the graphics before the game release. And that actually took a big hit, and it was a security mishap. So if someone like an insider, like someone employee, if they have the power to do something this disastrous big, then how can we trust anyone, and whom should we be actually trusting? So that is the question. So answer is simple, trust no one. And that's what brings us to Zero Trust security. So yeah, Zero Trust security is actually a framework, an architectural model, which gives you guidelines, like how do we secure our enterprise, our architecture, and you can actually extend this to different environments, different ecosystem, your organization. So if any one of you guys, like I know there have been like DevSecOps sessions, but if any one of you guys, you all are from security background, you all must have seen different security models, and we have been implementing different security models over time. So how is Zero Trust security different and what we have been using previously? Of course, over the years, we are in IT, we have been doing something, we have been using some security model. We never left our applications just unguarded or unauthorized or exposed to everyone, right? We did have something. But was it sufficient enough? And in today's world where there are like so many different devices, systems, do they sustain? Do the previous security methods sustain? No. So what did we use previously was perimeter-based security method. So in simple terms, it is like you're just guarding your organization externally, okay? And once a person gains access to your organization, he or she, I mean, they have access basically to all the resources, to all the floors, to all the, basically to all the environments. So I have two graphics here. One is like a company and the other one is like a swipe machine. So let's take this as an example and then we can understand better like what I'm trying to actually explain. What is the difference between perimeter-based security and the Zero Trust security? So we can take an example of a traditional company wherein once, if you're having a badge or an ID card, that is sufficient enough to gain you access into the organization. And you can literally travel all the floors, all the room, all the departments, and no one actually gives a care. You're just like, you're free to walk anywhere. That is perimeter-based security, wherein you're actually guarding your organization, your enterprise architecture, just using firewalls, VPNs, and the external blocking systems. And once an entity, attacker, whoever it is, if he gains access to a system, he can actually exploit your data. There is a security threat. He can like misuse the data, or there could be any attacks like DDoS, or there are different kinds of attacks. So we are not going into the security part now. So yeah, that is how perimeter-based security is. You're just guarding on the external end. Whereas on the zero trust security, at each and every stage, you're just verifying the user, you're validating and authenticating the user. You're making sure that at every stage, if he has or if they have access or not, okay, to a particular resources. And how are we going to do this? Using multi-factor authentication, using identity management, role-based access model. So there could be different security models we are using, different security mechanisms basically are going to use. But one thing which you're going to make sure is at each and every stage you're going to verify them. You're going to validate them, authenticate, authorize them. So that is like the core or underlying principle of zero trust security. And using this principle, you can actually take zero trust security ahead to like different architecture or different ecosystem, different end systems, wherever you want to apply. Okay. So let us see what are the actual core principles apart from like never trust, always verify. So the first one, definitely we have seen like never trust, always verify. We are going to verify constantly at each and every stage, just like the way we have this ID card or swipe machine or a fingerprint at each entrance when we enter an organization. And there are certain rooms where our ID cards doesn't work or our badges doesn't work. They need specialized approvals or personal approvals, which only then you can access a particular room. Similarly to our IT or our infrastructure as well, we are going to have such kind of mechanisms, such kind of validations. Okay? So that is like never trust, always verify. Second one, least privileges and by default deny. So by default to all the APIs, so we are like APIs or resources. Here we are actually going to talk about APIs, but it could be like any resources, any end systems. By default, you won't be having access to them. I mean, you need to validate, you need to prove yourself that you are an entity who is authorized to access these resources. And whenever the entity gets an access, we are going to make sure that they get the least privileges. Like not write and update for all, just read. If they are someone like who is going to, in terms of APIs, if we talk, there are different methods, right? Get, post, put, delete. So if a user who doesn't want to, if they don't have access or authorization to update a record or something, they're just going to have read privileges, which is like the least ones. So we're going to make sure that we are giving the least privileges, and by default it's denial. Third one, full inspection and visibility. So with number of application, number of end systems growing up, so there are large amount of there is actually the mesh kind of thing created, or there is like complex architecture. So we don't have idea like from where the data is coming, from where it is passing through, and how is the flow or how is the architecture working. So we need to have a full visibility and control over our data. We need to know like where our data is coming from, what payload is it carrying, and how are we we need to have a good logging and monitoring mechanism. So that is so important. And we also need to ensure that the payload that we are logging, it doesn't contain any sensitive data. Okay? So you need to have an overall architectural view of your APIs, the endpoints, what endpoint is it carrying, and how is it going to flow, how the flow will be, everything. And the last one, centralized management. So this comes along with my previous point, we are having so many end systems and all, right? Different end system, there is different APIs, and they're all scattered over different clouds. They could be local, they could be a hybrid model. With this, you need to have one place stop where you're actually going to manage all these APIs, all these endpoints, and you're having a full control along with visibility. So if there is any threat, if there is any attack, there should be one place where you can actually manage all this thing. You can bring them down, or you can control the attacks. So that is why centralized management is important. And for this, you could be using your API gateway, or if you have an API manager, or any tools, whichever you're using. So that works. Okay. So as I already told, you can have zero trust security for different applications, different enterprise ecosystems, different machines. But in this case, we're actually going to learn about zero trust security for your APIs, because API security has been quite neglected. It's like almost 41% of the organizations, they have been facing threats about API security, or they have actually been attacked. So the common attacks would be like DDoS, denial of service, or data breaches, or XML XML threats or JSON threats, which are like injected via the API calls. So you need to protect your APIs from all of that stuff. And we'll see in the demo as well, like how do we protect our APIs, what are the different policies we have, and no matter which tool or which platform you're working on or which API it is, if it is a REST, so you need to protect them, and how are you going to do it is like so important. So yeah, so how do we implement zero trust security? What is the mechanism? So we can see a Lego block here. So we are actually going to the process is called as microsegmentation or layered approach. So what is microsegmentation or layered approach? Like you're actually dividing your entire organization or your entire infrastructure into small fragments or layers. And then when you have granular control over these layers, you can actually apply security to these things. So let us speak in terms of APIs, right? So if we are having different endpoints and we'll see in the example as well ahead, but suppose if you're having different endpoints, okay, one is going to get some orders and one is going to post some orders. So not all of them will require same amount of security. So suppose if I'm posting an order, if I'm sending some data in the backend, so it will need more security, because not any random person can come and update my database or my records or can make changes to my system. But in the other way around, if there is some public information which I want to just get using an API call, so that is something which will be needing a different kind of security on the other hand. Like the previous one which I said, the post call, it will be needing something like OAuth or maybe GWT policy which I can apply. But if it is a GET call, and what I need to protect it from will be like denial of service attack, DDoS attack, because in case of that, the GET call, there is a chance that an attacker might be sending large number of requests and getting the system down. So there could be different scenarios for different endpoints. So we need to actually create fragments and layers, and we need to identify our resources. What are the assets we are having? How is the data flow? And only when we create, we can call it as divide and rule. So we are using microsegmentation here, and then accordingly we are going to apply our policies and security mechanisms. So that is microsegmentation or a layered approach. And how are we going to implement the zero trust security for your APIs? So we can say the previous core models which we have seen, the core principles. So based on those 4 core principles, we'll see how do we apply, what are the mechanisms we have for applying zero trust security. So for the first one, never trust and always verify, we are going to use mechanisms like multi-factor authentication, single sign-on. The traditional ones, basic username, password thing won't work now. So along with that, we can also use role-based access model. Okay, so that brings us to never trust, always verify, the first principle. The second one, least privileges and by default deny. So for this, definitely we are going to use the role-based access model. We are going to control how do we give access to our APIs and who is having which kind of access. Third one is full inspection and visibility. For this, we are going to have a good monitoring tool and a good logging mechanism. We're going to make sure the logs are being captured, they are monitored, and they are constantly actually monitored. So we don't know, you can also set some alerts if you think there is something that's suspicious, or if this, in terms of the number of records. So if a particular API is getting, it is supposed to be getting only on an average 10 API requests in a minute or something, but it is getting hundreds or thousands of this, that is something suspicious, right? Someone is trying to do something wrong with my system or trying to get it down. So in that case, I can have a rate limiting policy where I'm actually limiting the API count. So yeah, we need to have a full inspection visibility for which we can use monitoring, logging, alerting mechanism. Okay. And the last one, a centralized management. For this one, definitely we are going to use API manager and also the API management tools or API gateway. So if you are not familiar what is API gateway, API gateway is more like a guard, which is guarding your organization, and it's before even your API request it reaches the backend, the API manager will ensure that it's actually validating the request. Only if the request is containing the right amount of right headers and right authentication, the token, everything, only then it will allow access to the backend. So API gateway, it kind of acts as a blocker or a middleman, which will be forwarding your request to the backend and then getting back your data. Okay. So with this, so the one which I spoke about, like we're going to have a layered architecture or a layered approach. So let us assume that we are having different kinds of APIs and there are different end systems. So if you see there is SAP, there's Workday, Salesforce, there are different those boxes which could be like your end systems, which are your in-house database and all. So all these are interconnected, okay? And the outer red dotted line, that denotes like a peripheral or the perimeter-based security, which is a traditional approach. We are just guarding it in the, on the outer side, and once the attacker gain access, they can actually access all the endpoints. There is a lateral, unauthorized access, which gives definitely rise to threat. And the inner circle is like at every point or at every API entry point, basically we are having some security mechanism, we are guarding it. So it's always verifying no matter what. So how are we like, I already have an API in place and I will just see like how do we put an API. Also, this is an order management system, which is a use case, and we are having different layers of APIs. Those M thing, you can mule sub thing basically. So there are different APIs and they are connected to different end systems. There is a mobile device, there is a mailing system, and in the lower end, there are different Salesforce, Workday, or different cloud system, virtual databases, and all these things. And if you see at each and every endpoint or the entry point, I have applied different policies or different security mechanism. So it could be like basic authentication, which is just having a username, password, because if it is just a simple thing where I don't need JWT policy or where I don't need OAuth mechanism, I can have a simple authentication. Or I could be having a header injection, rate limiting for the ones which are exposed on the outer side. So this is overall API mechanism. I'm sure like you guys are mostly from DevOps side or you must be from DevSecOps or side. So you all are not exactly working with APIs, but on the overall end, it could be like any of your application, because this is Zero Trust security still remains a concept. And you can actually extend it to any of your applications or no matter which application you're working on, or also your DevOps infrastructure. Okay. So this is the thing which we are going to see in our demo today, how we can apply our JWT policy, Java web-based token, and how do we generate this token, how easy it is to apply when we have actually a centrally managed API management system. Okay. So with that, let's just go ahead and we'll see the demo. Cool. So now, I'm in Anypoint platform, which is like my, it's MuleSoft's the centrally managed for API management. Basically, you can design your applications, you can manage your APIs, you can do all it manages the entire API lifecycle. So you could be managing your APIs locally, or you could be having a different tool, doesn't matter. We'll just see what are the best practices, how do we apply a JWT policy. Okay, all right, let's get in. And this is a free trial account. If you want to try, you can just try it out as well. So let me take you to my REST API. This is something I've designed using RAML, RESTful API modeling language. You could be using different API language. You could be having a different API altogether, which is like a SOAP API or something. But the security essence, it still remains the same. So here if you see, even at the API level stage, I have actually guarded my API using basic authentication. Okay, and I've actually mentioned it in my API as well. So suppose these are the different endpoints. There is a ping, there is a customer entry point. Yeah, it's well, cool. So let me just try it out. So trying out in the sense, I'm just mocking this API, okay? And when I mock this API, it's actually asking me for a username, password. So this is called as a design, API first approach. Like even when your API is in progress, while it's design stage, you can validate your API, okay? You can just give some random username and password and you can just try it out. This is not the actual authentication. It's just simulating your response. So if there is some UI guy or if there is someone external, like your client's a project, if they want to see like how the API is, how it's going to function, they can try the API even before it is deployed, even before it is published, even before it is even before building the application. So it's giving you what are the security principles. So you might be thinking that security is something only for maybe the guys who are in on the network side, or maybe who are actually managing the infrastructure. But even as a developer, you have a role to play in security. If you're designing your application, make sure that you're encrypting all the credentials, you're using the property files, well encrypted, the proper algorithms. And if you're an API developer, just make sure you're having all the APIs, all the resources secured. Okay, so this actually gives, suppose if there is a third person who is a GUI developer and they don't have technical background knowledge, or maybe, what is actually going on behind the API, they just know what they have to deal with the APIs. So accordingly, they can build their APIs which will be having, so this actually gives them an idea how to manage or how to inculcate the security stuff. Moving on to the next part, okay, here the security thing which I told you, yeah, this is actually having the different rule sets, so security rule sets. So suppose if there are API keys and cookies, API keys and queries, if you see, there are different violations which I have already listed down, and this was this is just a rule set which I have added in a YAML file, okay. So this is an example. I'll make sure the example is also available to you if you want to access, or if you're just creating a trial account, we'll already have all the examples and everything present. So make sure that you're having all this details, security related details already added in your account, in your APIs. And if there is a new developer or someone who's completely new to API design, but he has newly joined your organization and he's trying to design an API. And in case if he has missed some of them, we previously saw this thing, right, the Sonar Cube. So we have actually been standardizing our applications, or maybe the code standards, okay, but that is in respect to coding standards and the bugs and everything. So why not extend that same thing to our APIs, in terms of security? So that is what we are actually doing here. So if you're the new developer, or if there is anyone in your team who actually misses some security related violations, or if they're violating the security thing, so there will be an alert raised, or the API won't go live, or when it won't go ahead in the further stage, which is the development. So this is how it is. And the next would be API governance. Okay, I'm not saving. So API governance is actually the one which we said, acting as a Sonar Cube thing, you're creating a new profile, a security profile, and you can say if the rule sets are matching, if they are confirming or not, and only then, let me show you, I'm creating a profile name which is security best practices. Okay, sorry, let's stop. And what kind of security I want to, REST APIs and security. Okay. Cool. And then I can just do next, and then I can select what type of best practices do I want to apply. So if I'm dealing with security, I'm going to apply security best practices. Okay, the authentication best practices. So if you want to see what do these rule sets, or what do they have in actual, so we can also check out the rule set. So it is having all the checklist, what are the OAuth's risk name, what are the implemented rules, and if your API is missing any of them, it will be caught, and it won't be conforming to your API standards, API security standards, and it won't allow you to go ahead. So that is one of the things as a developer you can implement. So you could be having your APIs designed manually, or you can be having, you are not using, basically let's assume that you are not using any API management tool or anything. But still, even if you're doing it manually, you can have a list of codes and best practices which you are comparing, is my team following all the best practices, the coding standards related to security. So that would be the first stage when you're actually implementing Zero Trust security. And implementing Zero Trust security isn't like a short-term process or something, a one-year project, something which you will complete it out. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of times and maybe years to actually implement Zero Trust security. And now that I remember, I actually forgot to mention, you don't have to, you don't need anything extra or something out of the box to implement API Zero Trust security. You could be having your organizations, like there could be some kind of methods which you are already implementing. You can just extend them ahead. You can just identify the loopholes in your system, like where are the security threats possible, what are the potential security like loopholes present, and you just need to address them. So that's how you are you're approaching from traditional architecture to zero trust security, and it's definitely going to take time. Okay, so I'm creating here a security profile and okay, the category, the tag, because there are going to be different APIs. Okay, apply. So that brings me to only one API and create. Okay, so the profile has been created. It is actually showing me green. So the similar profile you must have seen with SonarQube if you have used, or any other coding standards. So this is in terms of API and security profile. So it is saying that my API, which we have seen previously, the REST API, it is following all the standards, the tools, the security principles. So that's the reason. Okay, now it turned green because there might be some. Okay, there might be something. So that is how you're going to get actually the result, like how is your API conformant, non-conformant, if it is following all the coding standards or not. Okay, I know why we got the error, because we added 2 profiles and one of the profile was not supposed to be following the conformance rules. Okay, moving on to the centralized management, or a 4th point, one of the core principles. So we have API manager. So that is what I was saying, like you need to have a centralized management tool wherever your APIs are or wherever your applications are. So using API manager, I can actually manage all the APIs, whether they are present on cloud or whether they are REST APIs, SOAP APIs, if there are different applications, even if they are not, like this is designed mainly for predominantly for MuleSoft, but it could handle all kinds of APIs, all kinds of systems. So you need to have some API tool or API platform which gives you a centralized management system, okay, in terms of security. And this is the profile which I have created. It's actually like an API gateway, which will allow you to which will allow your APIs to actually be authenticated. So it is like a guard thing. So let us apply a security policy. Okay, I'm going to add a new security policy over here, and there are different range of security policies which you can actually implement. It could be OAuth, JWT validation, basic authentication, are very simple. So I'm actually doing this using the API manager, but you can do it using any of your tool or any of your current existing systems. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement JWT validation. Okay, you need to select your algorithm. I'm selecting HMAC, and for JWT, if you have previously worked on it, you can go to this platform, jwt.io, which actually, and you can generate a token here. So today we are going to generate a static token, but when you are actually implementing security stuff, you will be having a dynamic token, and it will be generated at runtime. So whenever you're sending a request to your resources or your end system, okay, just like the way this is quite common as well, I would say. We usually have those Okta verify on our phone, or we have that DO security mechanism wherein we accept or reject a request to a particular thing, right? This is the same, we're just implementing it for APIs. So if you see anywhere like you have an Okta verify, that is a part of multi-factor authentication. Okay, and the request which we get for Okta or anything, that is actually the token which has been generated. And today what we're generating here is a static token. So in this thing, we have seen that we are generating a key which is going to be like a 256-bit character. So how do I generate a random key? I'll be just using random key generator. Yeah, got here. And that will give me a 256-bit key. Okay, this is the one. Sorry. I'll just copy the key and I will add it as my signature. Okay, this is the public key, and I'm also adding it to my the JWT key here. Okay, and that's all. So when we say about configuring the policy, if you can see over here, apply configurations to all the APIs and methods, or you can choose to apply for a particular method. You can just select like which API endpoint I want to apply which policy and what is the endpoint going to be, or I can just apply for all. For now, we're just going to apply the policy for all and just click on apply. At the same time, if you see after adding this thing, the token changes. So once we have added the signature, so we are adding the public key and our token changes. So this is actually quite technical thing, and you don't have to worry about setting it up. Like if you're into infrastructure and if you're actually responsible for security thing, it's quite easy to secure as well. I mean, this is an implementation method, and we have already understood like what is the overall essence of zero trust security. So we see the policy has been added. Okay. So now I can just go ahead and I can, if I just try hitting my API or requesting my API, it's giving me JWT token is required. So only a person who has access, who has like valid authentication, only they can access the API and not everyone. So in case of this, we can also have a simple basic authentication, right? Username and password, which is very simple. Everyone can remember username and password. But that is not going to serve a purpose. That will be like, you can actually share username and password with anyone, and that is like not something which will be valid in today's time. We need something which is dynamic because things change quick and you need to be on that. So with JWT bearer, just a bearer token, we are going to copy the token which we have generated here. Even this token is a static token, and when you're actually implementing it, you won't be having a static token, you won't be having something which is dynamic. And for that we have different identity managers, Okta and all, which helps to generate these tokens as well. So after this, once I send or request, okay, authentication denied. I did pray demo gods. Let me see if my API has been applied or not. For that, I'll just go ahead to my runtime manager, where I can actually monitor logs. I can see what is the status of API, who is sending what request, if my policies and security policies and everything have been applied or not. So this is the application. So once you build your API, you'll also build an application out of it. So I have a mule application which I've built. I've deployed it on cloud, which is like on Cloud Hub, and underneath it is like EC2 instance. So let me see the logs. And it also gives you like beautiful dashboard, right? You can actually see what are the number of requests. You can see all those graphs, messages, average response request time. So it's giving me a total insight. So API governance demo in application JWT policy has been applied. So we have the signature which we have copied and everything. Okay, let me just check it once if I have copied everything right. This is the token, the signature has been applied. If not, we can just apply a policy once again because that was, okay, it's still giving me authentication error. So let me go back to my API manager. I can just delete this policy. I can apply it again. I know, that's how it is about the live demos. So I'll select the signing mechanism, HMAC. I'm doing in front of you, you guys are the witness. So if anything goes wrong, I don't know. Let me copy the 256-bit key, and I'm pasting it here in the JWT key. And I'm going to skip the client ID validation because we are not identifying client ID, client secret or anything. That gives us a furthermore level of validation. Let us keep monitoring our logs for the status. It takes actually some time to apply the policy, get the logs and everything. So let us see if it's applying or not. And we can also see that it's hitting the API again. It's still authentication denied. Okay, it should have been like JWT policy. Okay. Token is required, so it's good. Policy applied, configuration, okay. So let me just copy this thing again and create a new token. Okay. Bearer token, and yay, it worked. I don't know. I don't know what we did wrong before, but yeah, it worked. And the bearer token was identified and it gained access to the API endpoint. So yeah, this is the kind of, I mean, this was a kind of static thing, but definitely you got it, like how are we going to do, how are you going to actually extend it? Cool. So sorry, what am I doing? Slideshow. So we have already seen the thing, okay, like how it was and like how do we implement API security. So you have seen what is the need for API security, what are the, what is actually zero trust security. So basically just let me revise it completely for you. So it is a security mechanism, a model, or which helps you to protect your organization from external threats, and the core principle of zero trust security is always verify. Okay, the other three principles along with like always verify and is the centralized management. The other one is like continuous logging and mechanism. Okay, and you're having full transparency and control over your APIs. We have also seen the difference between zero trust security and perimeter based security. So basically what happens is perimeter based security, you're just having control on the outer side, and like once the attacker can gain access to like resources which are like internal, and they can have unilateral unauthorized access to the entire system, and that's the reason we moved to zero trust security. Okay, sorry, I just missed a few points as well. And we have seen like how do we implement security. You can have different policies, as per the endpoint, the needs, and yeah, there was a demo for you, and the layered security and micro-segmentation. So this is technique like divide and rule. Basically you are going to have your entire organizations, resources, system, assets, everything at one place. You're going to actually have a list of everything, and further you're going to break them down into granular pieces and gain a granular access over all of them. Okay. Thanks. The next steps, you can join the community, the MuleSoft community. You can learn more about zero trust security. There is a Trailhead account which is there. You can actually do some trainings and you can learn about it. Or if you want to learn Salesforce, MuleSoft, okay, or any of the technologies, basically this Trailhead account will be giving you access to everything. It's free. It's free for a lifetime, and there are so many like free courses available for you guys. So you can just sign up for it. And the Anypoint platform, the MuleSoft's API management tool, you can actually create a free trial account for 30 days and try that out as well. You can see how do you easily build your APIs and then apply policies, manage your APIs, deploy your APIs on cloud. There are some free workers available for you guys if you want to try out. And yeah, that's all. So this is the book which I have co-authored. It's called as MuleSoft for Salesforce developers. So is there anyone who actually wants to like learn MuleSoft or get started with it? Because I have this to give away for free if you are interested in learning. So also with that, we take all your questions, and yeah. Thank you.